The first time he walked in, I thought it was some kind of prank. Famous people don't stumble into rundown coffee shops in the middle of nowhere, especially not past midnight, especially not when I'm the only one behind the counter. But there he was, Colin Hayes, the kind of name that could make girls scream and tabloids explode, standing in my cafe as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The problem was, I didn't want him here. I didn't want his smile that looked like it had been carved by angels. I didn't want his eyes, God, those sharp, stormy eyes searching me as if I were more interesting than any spotlight he'd ever stood under. I didn't want the danger of someone like him stepping into my quiet life. But every night he kept coming back. I run a small coffee shop in a forgotten corner of Seattle. It's the kind of place people only find when they're lost, the kind of place where I thought I could hide. I built these walls with chipped bricks and the smell of roasted beans, believing that if I kept my head down, if I kept everything predictable, I could keep the ghosts of my past from clawing their way back. Then Colin Hayes had to ruin everything. He ordered the same thing every time. Black coffee, no sugar. And he sat in the same seat, by the window where the rain streaked the glass. Sometimes he scribbled lyrics on napkins. Sometimes he just stared out at the night as if it might stare back. And sometimes, most dangerously, talked to me. "Quiet night, huh?" he'd say, his voice low, casual, but always carrying that undertone, that subtle invitation. I'd shrug, keeping my replies short. "Always is around here." He didn't leave when the clock struck closing. He never did. Instead, he lingered, asking me questions I didn't want to answer, pushing into spaces of me I'd kept locked away. "You look like someone who's running from something," he said once, leaning back with that crooked smile. Am I right? I remember gripping the coffee pot so tight I thought it might shatter. I wasn't about to let him peel me open like one of his sad songs. But the thing about Colin Hayes? He was relentless. The tabloids called him reckless. A genius with a guitar, but a disaster with everything else. He had scandals like I had cups of coffee piling up, overflowing, staining everything they touched. And yet, in my cafe, he didn't feel like a headline. He felt real. Too real. And I hated him for it. Because every time he came back, every time those storm gray eyes found mine, I felt the cracks spreading through my carefully built walls. One night, when the rain was coming down harder than usual, he stayed until nearly 3 in the morning. The streets outside were drowned in silver reflections. I was wiping down tables when he asked, almost softly, "Do you ever get lonely here?" It was the first time I looked at him long enough to see the tiredness under his charm, the kind of exhaustion no amount of fame could cure. And for one dangerous second, I almost told him the truth. But instead I said, "I like quiet." He smiled at that, but it wasn't the kind of smile you give when you're amused. It was the kind of smile you give when you recognize yourself in someone else. That was the night I realized I was in trouble. Because Colin Hayes wasn't just visiting my coffee shop. He was unraveling me, piece by piece, with nothing more than black coffee, silence, and questions I couldn't ignore. And no matter how much I told myself to stay away, I kept finding excuses to look at him, to listen to him, to want him. But want is dangerous, especially when the whole world belongs to him and all I have is this small coffee shop and the fragile piece I'm barely holding on to. He showed up again the next night, guitar case in hand, dripping from the rain. His hair clung to his forehead, his clothes darkened from the storm. He looked like every tragic ballad he'd ever sung come to life. "You're soaked?" I muttered, reaching for a towel I kept behind the counter. Before I could think better of it, I tossed it to him. He caught it easily, smirking. "You worried about me?" "No," I lied. "I don't want puddles on the floor." He laughed, that low, melodic sound that made my chest ache. "Cold. I like it." But then, instead of sitting in his usual spot, he leaned against the counter, closer than he'd ever been. Close enough that I could smell rain on his skin, hear the quiet hitch of his breath. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "most people would kill to have a conversation with me. Yet here you are, acting like I'm some stranger off the street." "That's exactly what you are," I said sharply, trying to ignore the way my pulse betrayed me. He tilted his head, studying me as if I were the one under the spotlight. No, I don't think I am. Something in the way he said it made my throat tighten. The world might have known Colin Hayes as the reckless star, the beautiful disaster. But here, in the half-light of my cafe, he was just a man staring at me like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. And for the first time in years, I felt something dangerous. Hope. The truth is, I had been running for so long I forgot what it felt like to stand still. My life had been built around silence, around keeping my past buried under routines. Grind beans, brew coffee, close shop, go home alone. But Colin shattered that silence the way thunder tears through the sky. I should have hated him for it. Some nights I told myself I did. But hate doesn't make your hands tremble when he leans too close. Hate doesn't make you remember the warmth of his laughter hours after he's gone. It was something else. Something I had promised myself I would never feel again. The breaking point came on a Friday night. The cafe was empty except for him, his guitar resting by his side. He strummed a few quiet chords while I wiped the counter, pretending not to care. You ever wonder, he began softly, if the thing you're running from isn't as scary as the idea of being seen? The words hit too deep. I froze, cloth still in hand, unable to breathe. I don't know what you're talking about, I lied. He set his guitar aside and stood, crossing the room until he was right in front of me. His presence was overwhelming, warm, steady, undeniable. You hide behind this cafe, he said, voice low. Behind the coffee, the late nights, the empty chairs. But you can't hide from me. I see you. Something inside me cracked wide open. For the first time, I couldn't pretend anymore. Why me? I asked, almost a whisper. You could have anyone. You belong to the whole damn world, Colin. Why are you here? He didn't hesitate. His hand reached out, brushing mine on the counter. It was the faintest touch, but it set every nerve on fire. Because when I'm here, I don't belong to the world, he said. I just belong to you. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might burst. And before I could stop myself, before fear could drag me back into silence, I leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't a careful kiss. It was messy, desperate, the kind of kiss you give when you've been starving for too long. He responded instantly, hands cupping my face, pulling me closer, anchoring me as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. The cafe disappeared. The storm outside disappeared. There was only him. After that night, everything changed. He still came to the cafe every evening, but now he stayed until dawn, sitting across from me, sometimes talking, sometimes just letting the silence hold us. Some nights, he played his guitar, not for a crowd of thousands, but just for me. Intimate songs, unfinished melodies, pieces of himself the world never got to hear. And I gave him pieces of myself, too. Slowly, carefully. I told him about the life I had left behind, about the mistakes that had driven me here, about the scars I carried that no one could see. He listened. He never judged. Sometimes he reached across the table and held my hand, grounding me with nothing more than his touch. But the world doesn't leave people like Colin Hayes alone. One evening, just as the cafe was closing, flashing lights exploded outside the window. Cameras, voices, shouting. Paparazzi had finally found him. Colin, is it true you've been hiding out with some guy? Are you writing a breakup album? Who's the mystery man? My blood ran cold. The walls I had built for years began shaking all over again. I wasn't built for this, wasn't built for the chaos, the exposure, the judgment. You need to go, I whispered, panic rising. This was a mistake. You don't belong here. He turned to me, eyes fierce. Don't do that. Don't push me away just because they found us. You don't understand. I snapped. I can't survive that world. I can't survive being a headline in your story. He stepped closer, voice steady even as the chaos roared outside. Then let me write a different story. One that's just ours. Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted it more than anything. But fear was louder than hope. Colin, please, I whispered. Just go. His jaw tightened. For a long, painful moment, he searched my face, as if trying to memorize me. Then he grabbed his guitar and walked out into the flashing lights. And just like that, my cafe was silent again. The days after felt endless. His seat by the window sat empty, a wound I couldn't stop looking at. Every night I locked up, telling myself it was better this way, safer this way. But safety felt hollow without him. I had wanted peace. Now all I had was loneliness. It was nearly 2 weeks later when I heard the bell above the door again. I looked up, expecting a stranger, and froze. Colin stood there, hair messy, eyes tired, but smiling in that way that made everything else disappear. Before I could speak, he crossed the room and pulled me into his arms. "I tried," he murmured against my shoulder. "I tried staying away, but you ruined me, and I don't care who knows anymore." I clung to him, tears spilling freely. "You shouldn't be here. You'll lose everything." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his hand still holding me as if he'd never let go. "I already have everything. Right here." The walls I had built crumbled for good. And this time I didn't fight it. I kissed him again, not out of desperation but out of certainty, out of love. The paparazzi didn't vanish. The questions didn't stop. But Colin kept his promise. He didn't let the world write our story. We wrote it ourselves, late nights in the cafe, mornings tangled in quiet laughter, afternoons where music and coffee blended into something unshakably ours. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some days I feared the spotlight would swallow us whole. But Colin was always there, reminding me that love could be stronger than fear, that peace wasn't about hiding but about choosing the right person to stand still with. And somehow, in the heart of a small coffee shop, I found what I had been running from all along. Not silence, not safety, but love. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.